continuing our conversation with Dr. Desiree Cox, who is a specialist in future health and regenerative medicine. You told us before the break about your road to your Rhodes Scholar days.
Yep.
Let's talk about how you became a medical doctor now.
Yes, absolutely. So I get the Rhodes Scholarship. I'm excited about that. I find out after I've gotten it that I'm the first Bahamian to get it, the first woman from the British Caribbean. I hadn't gone into any of that, as I said to you before, with that in mind. I just was trying to get to Oxford. When I get to Oxford, I discover, I did the first 2 years are preclinical. I have this instinct, this really strong gut message that the medicine that we're practicing at this time is so primitive. And in a way, that was unfounded. If you just looked around where you saw the bells and the whistles and the modern technology. And so when I tried to talk about that to my colleagues, it was clear that that was unacceptable conversation. And so internally, being persistent and being a bit dogged like I am, I began to explore how we got this medicine. How does it look like this? Why does it look like this? I talked to my other fellow Rhodes colleagues who directed me to different things to read. I was reading Oliver Sacks, Susan Sontag. I was reading all sorts of things, medical anthropology, that were outside of the path, just trying to get a way in, trying to get a way into understanding. And my thinking was, if you could work out how we got this medicine, you could reverse engineer it to something else. Now, there's something else that now comes under the label of future health or innovation. I did not have that language. I didn't know what I didn't know what the something else was. I didn't even know quite what all the pieces involved. But I knew there was something that was more elevated. So I go through medical school and I'm finding this new path. I find and determine that the clinical trial and the process that leads up to the clinical trial is foundational to our current medical system. And I wanted to understand how we got that. And that gets me to do the master's and the PhD in history and philosophy of science at Cambridge. At Cambridge, I was excited about what I was doing. But I get to the stage, as I shared with you, in Cambridge, where 8 months before the end of my thesis, I come to the end of my scholarship money. I'm homeless, just on the verge of street homeless, and I, by multiple miracles, managed to have places to stay. I'd be house sitting someone's place for like 6 weeks and then not know where I was going to be living, and then the day before I would be street homeless, something else would turn up. So that's how the whole 8 months was. I finished up the thesis, I wrote the thesis, and two things landed for me. One, my ideas, I realized, were out of the box. I knew by that point I was on a different sort of path. It was, as I shared with you before, I was married, and it was clear that I was heading down the road of a divorce. And it was clear that to be on this path, I needed to be able to support myself, and that it would be unwise to throw away the ability to practice by having not done my specializing. And so I move on to specializing. I specialize in psychiatry, which was a fantastic experience, but it was still not quite the right balance. And in that process, so that's the beginning of an unfolding, and that's the beginning of finding new spiritual tools to connect with my true purpose. It becomes the time that I begin to meditate. I set up a charity that brought live music and drama to the public spaces of hospitals. And all of that, I reactivated my singing voice. All of that has me listening to the world from a different point of view.
Let me stop just for a second. You're talking about live music in public spaces. And how effective has that proven?
It's now a whole subspecialty. At that time, it took many letters to even get one hospital or two hospitals to allow me to do it. And it was just like, one hospital said, no, we can't have live music. We're afraid it will frighten the patients. I'm like, really? And so it's just amazing the way the world has changed. But that opened up for me this different way of listening internally from within to what the next steps would be. Because when you're on a path, and if this is true for anyone who is creating something that they don't feel the world's quite ready for it yet, you're like in a kind of wilderness, and you have to remember there's a word in Proverbs, but it's also been copied by the great sage Gandalf. If you like Harry Potter, which is that not all who wander are lost. Okay, so absolutely, and so you got to recognize you may be wandering, but you're not lost if you're listening to your internal voice, and that really gets me through a very rich career. But I'm always listening for what the window is. The gift for me was there are two gifts. One was the opportunity to come back to the Bahamas to lead that urban renewal program. That's where I really cut my teeth as an independent consultant. It's where I really learned to communicate unusual ideas to people. And then I leave the Bahamas and I go back to the UK. And the second gift was the 2013 Stem Cell Act. I was in London at the time, working in London. The Prime Minister told me about this new act, told me that they needed a system around this new bill. So when I come to the Bahamas to chair the ethics committee and create that system back in 2014, the pieces were almost together, but that opens the door for me because I started to see this is exactly the route that you need to root this Future Health Innovation Summit, and which I have created, but to root this Future Health Innovation as your expertise, your area of expertise, because longevity, we know advanced longevity therapies and regenerative medicines are predicated on the idea, the fundamental philosophy, that the body has its ability to heal and regenerate, that the body has already that ability. We now have new technologies, new medicines, new therapies that can nudge the body to do that. And so that's emerged as an idea that emerged as with specific new medicines coming out. But what's really important is to have a space where you can execute, because it's fine to have those in universities, it's fine to have them in rare spaces in certain hospitals, but you need for that new paradigm, this is the new paradigm of health we're in, for that to be realized, for it to be operationalized globally. And so the opportunity of what has been created in the Bahamas, or what I've been working on here, which is global, is to create a space where you can get those medicines, where you can experience those therapies in a regulated fashion that is safe, and make sure that that data is publishable. So that came to concretize that concept that I'd had way back in medical school, that there's something else. I don't quite know what it is, and I don't quite know what's the hook to ground it. It comes to be regenerative medicine and the future health paradigm.
It's time for us to take another break, our final break, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about future health, but really an important summit that you hold annually,
yes,
right here in the Bahamas. Stay with us. Final segment with Dr. Desiree Cox. Now, the act that dictates or gives the provisions for us to do, or allows you to do what you're so good at, was just passed in Parliament last year. So, what does that mean in a quick summary?
Yeah. So before I go to that, I'm going to come back to something else that connects that also with the summit too. Is you had asked me, okay, when you started off, did you know that you had all of these talents, all of these different pieces? Well, I knew most of them, but the art came into being when I was here originally in around 2004 to 2007. And since then, I've become an artist. My work is all over the place. But what that also grounds for me was the role that I'm, a part of the soul's purpose, which is connecting the dots between creativity and overall health, connecting the dots between left and right brain, connecting the dots between the body consciousness and whole person health, the restoration of whole person health. And that's the nexus between where metaphysics and science meet. One thing that the new act lays out, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be the person who was spearheading that new act and bringing it into being. One thing that lays out is it opens the door for things that are more than stem cells, for this whole rack of immunotherapies, regenerative medicines, gene therapies to be available, and also for them to be available and for global access. So if you know anything about science or history and philosophy of science, people would have read Thomas Kuhn, which is The Making of Scientific Revolutions. We are in a phase right now that is between, in the places that are between the new one paradigm and the next. So the opportunity of a system that is digital, got a digital platform, which is the plan for this, that collects that data, that operationalizes that, is a way of creating, engineering a system that helps us navigate this in-between paradigm phase while making those therapies available. The piece that I'm really passionate about making sure gets in the picture is the consciousness part, the why. It's fine to have great medicines. It's fine to have new regenerative therapies. It's really critical that we get people awakened to the why am I here? What am I doing here? The health and the medicine part of why you're here is to help you have the best possible life. But you also need to be having the right consciousness with this new medicine. That's often not a conversation that is had. One thing that we're excited about with this year's Healing Summit, and you mentioned it before, 2018, I started a summit called the Healing Future Health Innovation Summit that brings together all of the top speakers, leaders in this field in the world, has them talk about their science, particularly those people who are applying that in the world, making those things available. What's the real world data? And I also wanted to make sure that young people who are just looking at where they might plant their flag in the medical profession, what's going on, so that they can see the future as they're creating their path. So young nurses, doctors, started off also with high school top STEM students. We've expanded that in 2025, which is going to be our 5th year of operation, to include people who are changing careers whatever year, whatever age. Your genius has no age limit. And so that's a part of it. So we want to include that. But we're also wanting to bring the metaphysics into that so that you have the science, the creativity, the metaphysics talking to each other, and we're truly moving towards a paradigm.
It seems like you're inspiring people no matter what. That really, I guess, until your life is over, you can do something.
Yep. And my big thing is your final note of what would I leave for Bahamians? What do I want them to see? And I would say this is for anyone, not Bahamians, but anyone. You must know that you are a unique, you come into this world with a soul that has a unique purpose. There is no other version of you. You must know also that your potential, regardless of how your world looks like and how small it seems that it is you are at the moment for you, your potential is limitless. So the first thing to do is to shift your consciousness to recognize that you are a star. Now, you're living in 1% of what is manifested in our world is the true reality. The bigger reality is all the other consciousness. So it might be that you might be not easy for you to convince yourself of that, but you need to self-talk. You need to remind yourself that there's that huge potential. The second thing to get is to recognize the importance of living your soul's purpose, living your life. Many people live many other people's lives, not their own. Be mindful of that. And remember that you want to be living your life every day. Every single day. I want to have the merit and the miracle of fulfilling my soul's purpose for this day, and then again the next day, and for the whole duration of my life. And don't be satisfied with the great things that you've done so far and all the great achievements. When you think of the limitlessness of you, you could realize that you haven't even started yet, and that you've only just begun. I would leave you with that, and let no one suggest otherwise. Never accept a small reality for yourself.
Dr. Desiree Cox, wonderful speaking with you and great seeing you. And thank you for being with us. And we thank you for joining us. We also thank everyone here at Cafe Channing Noel, Mrs. Loretta Thomas and her team here. We're in the Duchess Tea Room, and it's just wonderful. You should come and have a little high tea one day. Thanks to the ZNS team. It's good. All right. She is the first Bahamian Rhodes Scholar, a musician and physician who has combined those disciplines for innovative healing. She's also a key architect behind the Longevity and Therapies Act. And by the end of this program, you will understand why Dr. Desiree Cox is a legend. Dr. Desiree Cox, you are truly a Renaissance person. Academic, medical doctor, musician, artist, and talented at all of them. When did you realize that you had all of these different passions?
Not all at once. So I would say in primary school, my first primary school teacher noted to my mother that I had perfect pitch. And I was always kind of at the piano, at the coffee table, fingering, air piano. And I loved music. I loved classical music. And I was mesmerized by it. And I loved singing. So that was that. That was primary. What's also primary was curiosity. As far back as I can remember, I remember being intensely curious about everything. How did everything work? How did that work? And if you ever told me something, I would be working out how to do it. So I remember being placed on a chair my mother was shopping at the perfume bar downtown. And she found me adding up the numbers in the phone directory. Because it was like, the idea was like, why do people have to have all these numbers to their phone number? Maybe if you could shorten it, you could add them up, they can have less numbers. So it was always a sense of trying to figure stuff out.
You've always been regarded really from days ago. We won't tell people how old we are, and I'm older than you. But you've always been considered a prodigy. Do you see yourself as that?
I didn't know that until much later. I just saw myself as interested, curious, and sometimes I struggled to connect with people. So I'd be explaining with exuberance all these things that I was doing. People would just look at me blankly.
So you realized that you were different.
I realized I was different, and then I had also the grounding of a family that, my family are from Crooked Island, farmers, fishermen, founders of Pentecostal churches. And so for them, it was all these ideas were fine, fancy, great, but does it grow corn? So they were really like the balance of grounding me in reality. So you could explain all these curious things, and they would really push you to find out how it worked. Like, what did you mean by that? And initially, I found that very annoying. Over time, I came to see that was a gift. Like when it came to wanting to make, my light shine in the world, to put something down, to go from ideas to something that was real, you then realize how important it is, even if you're seeing something that's a vision beyond what exists, beyond what can be explained, that you have to find a way to communicate that to the widest possible audience. So that, having a family where people, they had me as kind of odd, slightly eccentric Desiree, and when I was talking with all these creative stuff, they were like, yeah, and that really helped me to communicate. My test was, if I could get to explain it to my family, my mom, my dad, my great-grandparents, if they understood it, I knew I was communicating in a way that ordinary people would understand. So that was a very important gift to have that, to have the family that I have. And I always believe, your soul, all of us have these souls that light in the world, that were meant to do limitless things, extraordinary things. And you're always placed in exactly the right place that is the best place for that soul to evolve. Even when it doesn't feel like that way, even when it feels like surely the Creator put me in the wrong family, in the wrong country, in the wrong place. This cannot be right. Okay. You have to realize that you're in exactly the right place for what you need to learn, to grow, to evolve. And over time, I came to really trust that. It may not make sense, it may not look right, but if you consider that everything is perfect, exactly it is, the way it is, it forces you to reframe in your mind, like, okay, if this is perfect and it doesn't feel so and it doesn't look so, what can I make of this situation? Like, what can I get of this situation? What am I supposed to learn in this situation? What am I not noticing? What am I missing?
So problem solving is very important to, and it is important to what you do.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I think because things were never easy. People would say, yeah, but you can do all these things. They came quickly. True, but I also, at the same time of all those things, had this deep interest, it was more than a deep interest, it was like a deep need to connect with people. So when I felt that someone didn't get me, or that I wasn't being connected, or I wasn't really being appreciated, those things really bothered me internally, and they really forced me to find ways to stretch, to bridge. Like, if you're here, I'm looking at you, I'm talking, I'm seeing that face that says, I don't know, or cold, I'm not even interested. I'm always finding this way of like, where is this person listening from? How do I meet them at a place where I watch that light go off, and then I've awakened something in them? And then the question is, what did I say just then, or what happened just then that triggered something for you?
So this has challenged your means of communication in so many ways. And you are someone who can communicate at all levels, which is really important for someone who is a medical doctor. Right? But let's go back a little bit to probably, and I'm assuming that this would have been your first big achievement, becoming the first Rhodes Scholar from the Bahamas. Who turned you on to that? Because I'm sure most people weren't even thinking about Rhodes Scholar. What?
I didn't even know what it was when I won it. So that's a really, no idea what I'd done. No idea at all.
So how did that come to be?
So I'm 15, 16, and I have a very good school friend who is from India, and she was going to Oxford. I'd never heard of Oxford. I didn't know what it was. And she was studying for what were the Oxford entrance exams. And her parents had been preparing her for that for ages. So I'm studying with her. We're doing our homework. And she says, I'm studying for the Oxford exams. Like, what's that? And she shows me the brochure, because remember, this is the days before internet. This is the day when there are the magazines and brochures. She shows me the university brochure, and I see these students in these gowns, and all I remember of that image and these gardens was, wow, I want to be there. And it said that, all the best minds in the world were there, and the great thinkers were there, and all the great discoveries happening. I have to be there. So I said to her, I have to go there. And she said, well, you can't go there. I'm like, why can't I go there? Because it takes special exams, and people have to, at that point, the adjudicator would have to fly to the Bahamas to adjudicate the exam. It's like, that's to be arranged. So the more she explained, the more I couldn't. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to McGill. By that point, the pieces were together for me to be able to afford to go to McGill. I had pulled 2 different partial scholarships. I'd had or was about to have my first piano and voice recital to raise money for that. So we were pulling together the funds that could get me to my first university. And so I kind of sat there and said, okay. And out of nowhere, I said, I'll meet you there. Because her plan was she'd go to Oxford, and that she was going to study economics, and then she would go on to Cambridge. I was like, okay, I'll meet you there. So in my mind was going to Oxford. I had no means of going there. I had no idea how to get there. So I go to McGill, and I'm excelling at McGill. And one of my professors says, there is this scholarship that you should probably go for. And I look at the range of things that you do, because it's not just academic, it's about being, full-bodied in a whole range of different things. You should apply for this scholarship, this Rhodes Scholarship. It's for Oxford. And I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was Oxford. So in my brain, I was like, this is your chance, this is how you get there. So I apply for the scholarship. I get into the final 5. I go down to Barbados for the interview, and I'm the youngest in that cohort, and I didn't get the scholarship that year, and I'm disappointed.
But did it make you work harder?
Well, I just thought, I'm giving up. They don't want me or whatever. And I was then going to do my master's. I planned afterwards and had got a scholarship arranged to do my master's in quantum mechanics and computer engineering, because I had specialized in quantum mechanics and physics at McGill. And I go to University of the West Indies for the first year after that summer. It was like, okay, I'm going to medicine. Medicine was always in the picture. I'm going to medical school. I go to UWI, and the woman who was the secretary for the Rhodes Scholarship, she says, what are you doing here? We're expecting you to be applying for the Rhodes Scholarship, and we're expecting your application. This was maybe like a week or 2 before the application had to be in. And she goes into her car, she opens up the bonnet of the car, and she gets out the application. She said, get this into me, fill it out. Now, remember, I'm in University of the West Indies, I'm in Jamaica. This is a situation when you have to make a phone. You had to make a phone because you had to book a call with Mr. Eccles. Mr. Eccles had the crank machine, and you had to wait for a week. You had to sign in the book, and you had to wait for a week for him to get that call out. So I'm like, this isn't going to work. I go and I hang out with my friends who were doing law, who were in the bar school, and I call all of my references. I get the references. I get the application in. I go and I get into the final group again. I go to Barbados again. I get the scholarship. And this was maybe University of the West Indies started in October. I had gotten the scholarship by November. So when I win the scholarship, I remember the other contestants saying, for someone who's just won a Rhodes Scholarship, you look incredibly calm. Because it was literally like a daze. It was like I didn't really know what I'd done. I call my mother to say, yes, I've got this Rhodes Scholarship and whatever. And again, in their usual, they're like, and what is that? And where are you going? And why are you doing that? And it's already, why can't you just stay in medical school? Because my dream was, I wanted to go to Oxford. And
I don't want to stop you right there because you have so much to tell, but we've got to take a quick...
Yes, okay.
And we're going to go back. We have Dr. Desiree Cox telling us her story. Stay with us.